This channel is part of the History Hit network.
This is Lower Basildon in Berkshire, about 50 miles from London. The River Thames is over there. And in 1838, navvies laying this railway discovered what they called Roman pavements in this field. Judging from this, which was painted at the time, what they'd found were two posh mosaic floors, probably from a Roman villa. Unbelievably, the mosaics were broken up and no effort was made to find any more of the building. This whole site was virtually forgotten until recently, when some intriguing crop marks showed up on an aerial photograph of this field. Look at these. Because of this, a group of villagers contacted Time Team. They want to know, did Brunel's Great Western Railway really cut through a Roman villa? And is this the only thing that's waiting to be found in this field? Time Team have got just 3 days to find out. Robin, have you worked out where these mosaics were yet?
Well, we reckon somewhere out there in the middle of the line, because we've got a map of 1876 with an X on it, and X marks the spot. Roman remains found, clear as day.
David, you brought us here. Do you trust that X?
Absolutely not. The ad hoc X's on maps is, I don't believe them. I rather believe Charles Rhodes Smith, who is the antiquarian who came down and wrote a report. He's a stickler for accuracy, and I go along with his report.
The only snag was he didn't have GPS to exactly plot where it was. He merely says in Churchfield, where we are 200 yards from the high road towards the railway line. And that's not terribly specific for our purposes.
He didn't have GPS.
No,
he didn't
crop
have
marks.
crop marks, yeah. Mick,
Yes, Tone.
you know this rectangular thing here? Do you reckon that's a Roman villa?
It could be, but we've got a whole load of crop marks here. And of course, normally crop marks are formed where part of the crop is growing over ditches and pits, and therefore it's greener than the rest of the crop, whereas the crop that's growing over stoneworks tends to be parched out. And it's that difference that gives us the clue to what's there. But we'd expect on a site like this to have more than one period, wouldn't we, normally?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially in this area in the Thames Valley, it's been very attractive for settlement for millennia. And yes, you've got this rectangle which may well be part of the villa complex, but you've also got the clear marks of tracks, there are circles. One wouldn't be surprised if you've got things here that date from the Neolithic through to the post-Roman, and the only way you're going to find out for sure is by excavating.
Well, that was all right in the summer, but looking at this now, there's no crop marks here at all, are there? Where are we going to dig?
No, well, I mean, we've got a problem. Well, the first thing we've got to do is get this lot plotted onto maps, which is what Stuart and Bernard are doing. You know, they've got to turn an oblique air picture into a vertical plan. And by the time they've done that, we'll have got some geophysics results anyway. So we've got to hold off until we've got those two things sorted out.
Well, it's 10:10 now. The 10:10's about 30 seconds late.
History Hit is like Netflix, just for history fans. With exclusive history documentaries covering some of the most famous people and events in history, just for you. Our extensive catalogue of documentaries covers everything from the rise of Hannibal Barca to the illustrious treasures of King Tut. So sign up today for broadcast quality documentaries uncovering the mysteries of the ancient world. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a free trial, and Odyssey fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Odyssey at checkout.
Initially, geophys are surveying in the areas closest to where the map suggests the mosaics were found. Phil and Jenny, meanwhile, have already discovered some finds.
It's the way archaeology always used to be done, isn't it, Jan? I mean, people just going round looking at rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
Look at
wonderful.
that nice big old bit of grey. Where look? the throwing marks on it. Bone.
And an oyster shell. Enormous oyster shell.
Well, we've got the entire range of Roman finds here without actually having to dig for them.
That's right.
No wonder the locals want to know more about this site. One of them, Tony Freeman, sent us one of the best aerial photos and is interested in the process of transferring the crop mark information.
So we scan these photographs and feed them into the computer system and then adjust them so that they fit the map. And I can take that information off points along all these features to feed into the GPS system. And once they're in there, I can walk into the field and position myself over any of these points, trace these features out in the field.
Phil's been recruited to help Bernard mark the position of some of the main crop marks in the field.
This looks pretty neat, doesn't it? I'm quite proud of that.
Beautifully
Good
done,
and
Phil.
straight, look at that.
Yeah, wonderful. Right, I'm going to go off for the next one then.
What's clear to me now is that the crop marks cover a huge area of this field. By the way, ignore these circles. Apparently they're just caused by fungus. It's a bitterly cold day to stand around. I plan to keep busy. I've been given my own little camera this week to try and capture something of what goes on behind the scenes. The sooner these diggers have a target to dig, the better. Katie, how long have you been waiting to dig?
For hours and I'm freezing cold.
Is it always like this?
Yeah, normally the first day.
Have you any idea what it is that we're going to be digging?
Apparently it's a Roman villa.
Are you used to Roman stuff?
No, I've never done it before.
John, I don't think any of us can stay here much longer without freezing in this north wind.
It's a good job we're all huddled together, isn't it?
Have you got anything for us?
This is Bernard's plot showing the APs. This is the magnetic results. I mean, look at the correlation. It's absolutely superb.
That's extraordinary.
Spot on,
Even
even that
funny
little
thing there, yeah.
rectangular enclosure. And the ditch is showing really nicely. And a few things on the other side. But it's when we go to the resistance.
Oh, right.
That's when it gets really interesting.
Yeah, look at that.
Look,
Yes.
the ditch is showing as well.
Yeah.
But what we've got there now...
And that's right next to the cross. So it looks as if the cross is where the 19th century finds are found.
Do you think that's a building, John?
Near the building.
I think we're certain that's the building.
Geophys need more time before we decide where to dig on the other side of the track.
To look at the building.
But where do they suggest we place the first trench in this field?
We'd be inclined to think across this ditch to see if it is Roman.
Because it's on the same alignment.
It's also close to where the mosaic was supposed to be found.
Right.
So Mick, show me where we're going to dig this.
Well,
thing.
it's down this line. Look, they've marked it on the grass. So this is the big line. The other bit's over there.
Yeah.
So what we'd be doing is getting as close to the railway as we can. So somewhere down in the end here.
If this is a Roman ditch close to the villa, then we'd hope to find lots of debris from the building. Very few finds survive from 1838, when this mosaic floor was discovered. However, the interlocking square design used in the mosaic is typical of others made in Britain in the 4th century AD.
So really this is the only thing that enables us to date the mosaic, this painting we've got, because there's very little of it left, is there, Jill?
Very few pieces survive. We're very lucky in Reading Museum to have just a dozen pieces.
Is that all?
This is all.
That's pathetic.
Yes, I'm afraid so. And
pathetic.
even one of these, that's actually a piece of pottery rather than a tessera. And then we've got just 2 pieces from the coarse border around it. One of which is made from a reused roofing tile, because you can see the finger mark down the side of it.
So really, David, you wouldn't be able to date the mosaic at all just from those fragments. So we have to be very pleased we've got this painting.
That's right. The illustration is absolutely vital in terms of the dating of the mosaic.
But Chris, you're going to try and reconstruct this mosaic for us, is that right?
That's the general idea.
Now, would that be a reasonable thing to attempt in 3 days?
No, it's pretty rash. It's
really?
Rash. Yes. Well, I mean, we're only going to do a quarter of it. So we've got to do, not only have we got to sort of map out the complexities of that design and understand it, but then we've got to make between 8,000 and 10,000 tesserae.
8,000 and 10,000?
Yep.
Just for a quarter of it?
Just for a quarter.
It's a tall order because we're going to try and make the mosaic as authentically as we can. Carenza's keen to be involved and plans to spend a lot of time here over the next 3 days. Kate?
Yep.
Have you found anything yet?
Yeah, well, we think we might have found that ditch that geophys were picking up. There's a line going along there, the edge of the ditch.
Show me where it is.
Just along here. You can see where the dark soil and the lighter soil meet.
And can you see yet how wide it is?
Not yet, no, we've just got to clean it up.
You haven't found anything in it yet?
Just lots of tile and bits of nails and stuff.
Nothing
all
that's
Roman.
specifically Roman?
All Roman.
It's all Roman?
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look.
Yeah.
Look, Roman. Excellent.
The diggers may think I'm easily impressed, but the roof tiles represent the first clues we've found. In fact, the first material to be dug up since the navvies trashed the Roman remains here in 1838.
What would it have been like here at the time that they were putting this railway through it?
Well, you've got to imagine all these literally hundreds and hundreds of workmen, probably put up in some kind of little shanty town in the vicinity, and all beavering away like billio, because they had contracts to fulfil. They had to make sure that this railway got through on time, because there were incredibly harsh penalties on the contractor if he failed to deliver.
It was still pretty horrendous, though, driving their way right through a mosaic, wasn't it?
Well, it didn't really happen quite like that, because obviously this antiquarian had a chance to come in and record it before they literally broke it up. Although we've got wonderful descriptions talking about very little care having been taken to preserve this, because it disappeared piece by piece. And a basket of the tesserae fell to my lot, not as a willing despoiler, although perhaps not an unwilling recipient, amidst the sort of scramble that prevailed.
I say, it says piece by piece it disappeared under the potent influence of the current coin of the realm. So they were pulling it out and flogging it down the road.
Souvenirs, yes.
I think Phil would have made quite a good navvy in that period.
Yeah, don't let him hear you say that, though.
Go over there and say it to his face.
Brunel's railway came through the Goring Gap and along the river valley, following an ancient route used by man since prehistoric times. Our site here in the Thames Valley would have been a prime location to live in any period.
Well, we're here on the banks of the Thames, and we're roughly halfway between Silchester, which was a regional capital, and Dorchester-on-Thames, which was a local market town. The area in general was fairly affluent in the Roman period. I mean, you can look at the general spread of villas and probable villas across this zone.
Victor's been working on a sketch to give us an idea of what the Roman villa might have looked like.
It's a wonderful location. I mean, if we look at this photograph, you can see here you've got this great sweep, this bend in the Thames.
Yeah.
Here's the railway line, and the villa is located here. So it's got these wonderful views up and down the valley.
Can you stop playing that tune? No, I'm just cleaning my shovel up. By the sounds of it, I ain't going to get to use it.
Geophys now have a target to dig on the other side of the track. However, when I arrive in this field, everyone's just stood around.
We're not doing anything here because apparently we're not allowed to take any turf off at the moment because there's some protection on this field. So we need to have some permissions.
Where are we going to get the permission from then?
Apparently it's MAF.
Who?
MAF, Ministry of Agriculture,
Fisheries and Food. Oh, so it's a government job then?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that could take months.
The grasslands closer to the river are legally protected, and we need special permission from the Ministry of Agriculture before we can dig here. And let's hope we can get it, because Geophys are getting some very exciting results.
Really rather good. John,
Here,
talk us through
Tony.
it.
This is what we looked at this morning. We've now expanded the survey. You can see a whole series of walls all on this linement. You can see them quite clearly showing it black here. So these are likely to be wall foundations of rooms and corridors, the building complex itself, all on this rectilinear alignment that we were talking about this morning, with the ditches on this side. It's just possible it is going to be a robber trench.
The frustrating thing is it would only take a relatively small trench through there to prove so much. Yeah. And here we are, sitting here waiting.
Yeah.
No time to waste for our mosaic making team, a mix of local volunteers, experts and archaeology students who have thousands of tesserae to make.
You've got plenty of these, haven't you?
Yeah, that's hard rock chalk.
Right, so they're for the white bits in the design.
Yeah.
And
this is blue lias from Lyme Regis, being cut up in little sticks and then into tesserae.
And this is how the Romans would have done it?
Yep, that's right, exactly so. And then we've got the Roman brick and tile down here.
Right, and this is, again, the red tile.
Yeah.
It's genuine Roman tile.
That's it.
How many bits have you made so far?
I don't know, I hope somebody's been counting, have they? No.
But I mean, you need 10,000. Any idea how many you've got?
No idea. No idea at all. Just keep going.
Listening, Jenny.
Just to let you know, sir, we've just had permission come through. We can start digging in.
On for that.
We've lost a lot of time, but according to the record of what was found in 1838, the archaeology should only be about 14 inches below the surface. Is there another mosaic floor just waiting to be discovered here? Join us after the break.
Welcome back, day 2. Quick update for you. We came here to Lower Basildon because we thought that these crop markings might indicate a Roman villa, but it now seems that they might be part of an ancient field system, and the villa is actually on this side of the railway track over here. But the big story as we start day 2 is that virtually all of our archaeological tools were stolen overnight, and virtually the only thing that we've got on this side of the track is this shovel that Phil kept under his bed overnight. Why do you keep it in the hotel?
Where I go, my shovel goes, Tony.
That's all right, Victor's drawings are still here.
It's the trailer that we used to store the equipment that's been stolen, and as you can see, the thieves have dumped anything they didn't want.
You can't think they must have been very disappointed, most of it being wellies and stuff.
As it turns out, the digging tools weren't stolen, they were thrown into a hedge. So after only a short delay, we've started work. Historian Guy de la Bédoyère has joined us today, and already we've got a coin for him to date.
We have got this Roman coin, Tony, that came out of the topsoil of the trench we're standing next to. That's the Emperor Valens, about the year 364 to 378 AD.
But presumably because it came out the topsoil, it's not going to help us dating our villa, is it?
No, but it's a very good start. Unfortunately, it's not valuable enough to buy all our kit back.
It's a beautiful day, and for the first time, our site in the Thames Valley looks like an extremely attractive place to live. The geophys results seem to indicate that the remains of the Roman villa are on this side of the track, and it shouldn't be long now before we find out how much survives in the ground. Suddenly, however, I notice Phil's stopped digging.
Phil?
Yes, Tony.
Not often I see you sitting on your shovel.
No, well, a bit bemused at the minute.
Why?
Well, all we seem to have is natural gravel. And, I mean, at least where we expected to find walls, there are certainly no walls and no indications of walls.
If Phil's right and there's nothing in this trench, then this is a major disappointment. We need to talk to someone from geophys.
Have you found anything yet?
Come and have a look.
Oh.
We'd like you to explain that, John, if you would.
Doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's natural gravel, isn't it?
Well, that...
What do you mean, no?
No.
What do you mean, no? It's natural gravel.
Yes, but there's got to be something more than natural gravel.
Well, there's no fines, John, either, which we're a very...
I don't understand why we're not getting something obvious in the trench.
Where exactly is the trench?
We've put the trench here, Tony. Like that, so there should be those two walls.
That one there is the one where we've got the few fragments of charcoal and it is a slight depression in the gravel.
John,
and this other one would be about here.
That's the other one would be
John,
about
is
there.
it possible that spread of rather more flinty gravel there would give you a signal like that?
Well, I mean, the images are a bit blurred.
Yeah, but they're
aren't
sharper
they?
than this looks in here,
They're
aren't
sharper
they?
than it looks in here.
If we were on an evaluation,
yeah,
and we do this sort of thing every day of the week, to be quite honest, I would basically write this thing off. You'd clean it up, you'd record it, and wow,
fill it in.
Yeah.
So it's now 10:10, day 2.
What about the geophys down there?
No fines. The geophys hasn't worked.
Geophysics has worked.
Well, look, you
just haven't found what we've got.
You talked walls. You were talking about walls.
Yeah, but I said I didn't know whether we'd got solid courses surviving or whether we'd got robbed out trenches.
So we've got a gravel wall cut into natural gravel.
Well, look, you know, that's a distinct possibility.
Before
Phil.
you pair fall out, you know, let's just remind ourselves, you know, what you get on there is a set of physical signals
which we need to explain.
We then try and interpret.
Yes.
And if we dig it and it's not there, it's not that the archaeologist's wrong, it's us interpreting your signals. That's what it's about, isn't it?
Yes, we're
We
trying
need
to find an interpretation for these anomalies.
So we can't explain this, is what we should say.
Not at the
that
moment.
There's no bloody walls here, or no this, that, or the other here. Yeah. You know, it's difficult to explain.
So what we
those
need to do
signals
is
are coming from.
to select another area where we've got some clear results, put a trench across those, and see what we get.
It's agreed that a bit more work will be done here as well, to investigate the small area of the trench that's got bits of charcoal in it, which Phil concedes could just be archaeology. Geophysics, meanwhile, are not happy.
OK, well, I'm going to talk to Mick now about where we put the new trench. And we're right. They just can't find it. They don't know what they're talking about.
The absence of any finds is perhaps the most worrying thing, because there are plenty being dug up by the rabbits only a few metres away along this edge of the track.
I'll tell you what that is. It's a mortarium. Big mixing bowl. Interesting fact number one, introduced by the Romans and not used after the Romans. But this particular one, on a distinctive flange here, made in the Oxfordshire potteries, only about 10 or 15 miles upriver from where we are right now.
I mean, what worries me, I mean, it's partly because the trains keep going past, is that there's a huge area of land gone here, you know. I mean, I bet when Brunel built this, even if he built it on the wide gauge, it would have probably been, well, half or less than it is now. This is about 40 metres wide.
And so quite big enough to have a whole house in it.
You could, so we might have lost the whole villa.
Well, I think, you know, I'm beginning to wonder whether what we've got on that side is like boundary ditches and fields at if you like, that side of the villa.
Yep.
And what we've got coming out this side is going to be the gardens and the terraces going down to the river.
Surely the entire villa can't have been destroyed by the building of the railway, can it? Personally, I'm going to wait and see what we find in the new trench that's now being opened up in an effort to understand the geophys signals. Wherever we go today, it looks like we're not going to escape the trains. And here at our base at Beale Park, there's an added attraction for visitors to see, because we're trying to make a replica of one of the Roman mosaics, which we know was definitely destroyed by the building of the railway.
I see there's still a lot of chipping going on over there. How many tesserae have you got so far?
Well, I think we've probably about a quarter.
Quarter, 2,500.
Yeah,
so there's a long way to go yet.
And of course, this job would normally be done in the winter months. So when a mosaicist arrives on site, you know, it'd have everything prepared.
But you're starting to lay them here, I see. How's it going?
Well, we've made a start, as you can see, fairly well. Some of the tesserae could be a little better.
I can see you've got the sort of things for squaring them off
well,
here.
I'm afraid we've had to resort to some modern techniques, but of course they would have cut them on little anvils, as you've already seen.
But often when you find them on sites, they're not dead
well,
square, are they?
they're never square. I mean, and in fact, if you look very carefully at the mosaic, you realise they're usually full of irregularities. Quite extraordinary. But no doubt this one will be as well.
Joining us is Professor Susan Tebby, who's made mosaics before, but never on a 3-day timescale.
The whole point about this is that the mortar remains soft, so that there's always adjustment is possible, and we can adjust them, move them backwards and forwards very slightly.
One problem they have today is that they have to work quickly before the lime mortar dries hard in the sun. Although we haven't found any structural evidence of the villa yet, we're turning up lots of finds in Trench 1, clues to the building itself and life as it was lived here in Roman times.
Well, we've got a lot of building material, roofing tile, floor tile. This one's got a bit of animal footprint. It's like a dog or something's gone running across that.
You can see the pool
yeah,
points there.
Yeah. That's a nice piece of a 4th century, very deep dish. See
4th century, right.
Yeah, with its flanged rim. And we've also got a very nice piece of the locally made fineware that comes from the Oxford region.
Oh, it's got a stamp on it.
Yep, this is a maker's name stamp.
So can we tell what he was called?
Well, his name was Blurlup, looking at this. He was clearly illiterate. It's just a jumble of strokes and squiggles, but it's his identifying mark.
So that fits exactly with the date of the mosaic, doesn't it? Because David Neal saying it's 4th century. So
it's all consistent.
We're in the right spot.
This is a massive ditch, possibly 3 metres deep, and so wide, in fact, that we're having to extend the trench. This is no ordinary field boundary and could define the area of the villa itself.
What is interesting from up here is that this really is an incredibly narrow bit of valley, isn't it, that the river goes through. And much of the landscape is fairly level around here, and so they've almost picked the most dramatic bit of scenery to build the site on, haven't they, looking over the river?
At the moment, what seems to be emerging from looking at the landscape is that how long this gap through the hills has been used as a routeway.
This goring gap through here.
That's right. We've been finding that there's Mesolithic, Neolithic, Iron Age, Roman finds, all concentrating on this gap.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm particularly interested in is trying to find out if there is a villa here, how you get access to it, where are the goods that they're producing from the fields, how are they being taken out.
Yeah.
And I'm getting particular signs from the crop marks of a series of fields and paddocks, trackways, all around our complex next to the railway line, with a trackway coming from the edge of that ploughed field, round the escarpment,
down the edge there,
coming straight across towards the bridge over the river. That looks to be a major trackway coming down to a possible crossing in a very similar place to Brunel's Bridge.
Well, you see, that's interesting, because down here, where these green sheds are, is where the local archaeological society are digging another villa on this side of the river.
Yeah.
It looks like our villa was situated on a branch road off the main route up through the Goring Gap, and the idea that there may have been a river crossing here in Roman times is of interest to Robin.
I mean, one of the intriguing things is that we happen to have 2 Saxon charters, one of the 7th century and one of about 895, both referring to this place as Bestless Ford, Bessel's Ford, so that it seems to have been, in origin, a settlement associated with a river crossing.
Right.
They then ditch that name, and by the time of Doomsday, we've got Basildon, or Bessel's Denu, Bessel's Valley, indicating that it's probably moved from a river crossing here to a settlement here where the church is.
So we now know our villa was beside a river crossing, but is there any evidence of the actual villa to be found? In the latest trench, Trench 4, Phil and Carenza have found the remains of 2 walls.
There's more of it there.
And it's going on this way as well.
It's definitely aligned on that alignment there. You can see how the stones have been laid in nice, neat little rows, and then just mortared in with, well, local chalk, really, rammed in there. But look how close they are to the surface. Look, that is exactly where the plough would have been bumping about on them.
You've not found anything, have you, Phil?
Well, yes.
I can't say anything myself.
Well, you wouldn't, would you? Look.
No argument about this one. The geophys plot clearly shows these 2 walls at right angles to each other. It's a relief for geophys because it proves that in some parts of the field they are actually detecting archaeology and not just banks of natural gravel. Trench 4 is a good distance from where the mosaics were found, but could our newly discovered walls be part of the Roman villa? The layout of villas varied enormously. Is there one shape that would fit with what we know so far?
Well, looking at the terrain here, because we know we've got the edge of the terrace here, so we know nothing will extend down here. We know we've got part of the building under the railway line. We've got our 2 walls over here. We've got a building running that way. It's possible there could be another wing running back at 90 degrees towards the chalk hills in the area where the new trench has just been put in.
You think it's much more likely that it went that way and then that way, rather than that way and then that way?
Oh yes, there isn't really enough room for it to turn this way because you'd soon be off the edge of the terrace and into the floodplain. So if it does turn, it's got to go that way.
To check this possibility, Phil's now opened another trench, again targeted at some geophys anomalies. However, pretty soon it becomes clear there's nothing in the trench but flint. Not that Phil's disappointed. He's found a flint core, evidence of man living in this area thousands of years before the Romans arrived.
It's the bit of flint that you use to make blanks, and the blanks you make into other tools. This is not a tool in itself. This is a waste product. But all these little bits that come down there, all the little bits that they've knocked off, they are the bits that you use to make very, very small tools.
But not a Roman building, Phil.
Oh no, but who needs them with this? I mean, that's gorgeous, that really is.
Well, at least the walls we've discovered in Trench 4 are beginning to look a bit more substantial, and no doubt we'll find out more about them tomorrow. As for today, well, our evaluation work goes on, because there are other crop marks that Stuart reckons should be investigated. Could this be Roman?
I mean, it is a possibility, but it is on a slightly different alignment, and something of that form, I mean, it could conceivably be prehistoric, even a Neolithic enclosure, or it could be a timber building. If it was the latter, then it could be a potential Anglo-Saxon structure.
Right.
It would really be very nice to see a trench put across that to get a date.
So one more trench, the last to be opened today. Phil's leading the digging party and musing over the fact that if the villa had been discovered today, the railway would have had to be diverted.
You would never.
No,
and I mean, they wouldn't
no.
have excavated this. It would cost too much money to excavate it. They would have to divert the railway.
They would.
Keep digging.
Yes, I will. I am.
Our replica mosaic, meanwhile, is looking fantastic, and lots of lessons are being learnt in the process.
Coming on, I mean, down here it's very uneven, isn't it? You wouldn't want to walk on that in bare feet.
No,
would
quite.
you?
But you see, if you look carefully, when you do this tamping, it gradually levels everything up, and the mortar gets drawn up to the surface.
That's amazing. It's going to look brilliant when it's finished.
It is. It is.
But it strikes me there's still an awful lot of this board doesn't have mosaic on it yet. Are you going to get it done?
Yes, well, we're just completing this guilloche border, and if we work until it starts to get dark, then we should complete this.
You've got to get the guilloche border done tonight?
Yes, there's a real reason for that. These wooden battens that are on the outside of the guilloche border have to be removed so that we can then do the motifs in the lozenges and other shapes. But this has to be dry enough so that when we remove it, the edges don't crumble and fall away.
We're almost at the end of day 2, and Phil's relieved to find that his latest trench across this crop mark looks like it'll be full of archaeology.
And then you've got this very silty stuff, which is obviously the fill of the ditch, and it comes up, well, it's probably going to come up here. It gets very, very gravelly again on that side. But I guess you're looking at a ditch.
So following
about
this
that
orange,
wide there, look.
on this
That's
orange
it.
line.
That's it.
That's not bad, is it?
I mean, it's a lovely job.
But
Absolutely.
what is it?
Well, there you go, you see. I mean, just because you've got a Roman villa over there, don't mean to say that this is part of it.
It's definitely on a different angle to the Roman ditch we've been digging, and it's got us all guessing.
Well, Anglo-Saxon.
Well, lovely, lovely. I'd go for anything.
Or Neolithic.
Let me dig it out. Give it off. Let me dig it out.
I'm giving you lots of options.
End of day 2. Join us after the break when a bones expert is called in to help with Phil's trench. We uncover more Roman walls, and I get to show off our amazing collection of finds. Day 3. And for our team of students and academics working on our replica Roman mosaic, it's an early start.
This one first. This one first,
right.
okay?
Oh, yeah,
You just tip it slightly. And just
The first job is to remove the battens without damaging it.
That's it. Just lift it out. Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's better than I could have hoped for.
Oh, that's lovely.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's amazing when the battens come up, you can see quite how much empty space we've still got to fill, isn't it? They're just quite narrow bands we've done so far.
One reality we might have to face today is that the Roman villa that housed the original mosaic has been totally destroyed by the building of the railway. However, we've unearthed 2 Roman walls in Trench 4, which we're still investigating, although geophys are concerned that we've dismissed them as unimportant.
we've gone in with the techniques and we've found what look like good walls. And when they've actually put in the trenches, they confirm they're walls. But because there's no finds, they're saying, well, it can't be a villa building. We must be dealing with gardens. Well, I don't know.
I've reassured John that we are going to put a lot of effort into finding out more about these walls today. Incidentally, we did find archaeology in Trench 2, the scene of the argument yesterday. Further digging revealed an Iron Age boundary ditch dating to around 50 BC.
So you're telling me that bank then is what actually... It's mimicking a wall then?
Well, in a way, there's not a lot of difference between chunks of flint, you know, that form a bank and chunks of flint that form a wall.
So as things stand, we've found traces of Iron Age activity in Trench 2. We've got some Roman walls in Trench 4, which could be part of a Roman villa. But it seems most likely that the main building was here. And this is supported by the huge amount of Roman material coming out of the massive Roman ditch we're still digging here in Trench 1. But the most exciting development for Phil this morning is that in his latest trench over this rectangular crop mark, he's found evidence to suggest it may date back to around 3000 BC.
And look what we got out of it. Absolutely nothing but flint.
Is that worked?
Every bit of it. I mean, this is the really sort of classic bit. You look at any textbook and it'll have this sort of level area called a striking platform. And you see this big swelling?
Yeah.
That's what's called the bulb of percussion. Now, every time you knock off a piece of flint with a hammer, you get a bulb of percussion. And, you know, every one of these pieces...
That's got to be man-made rather
It has
than
got to be man-made. And you see, look,
something.
you see, it's also got more flakes taken off on that side.
Yeah. And is this an impressive collection to get from just one bit of ditch like
Well,
this?
it is, and I mean, you can see, look, they appear to have gone for what is very, very good quality flint. I mean, look at it, it's really black.
It's possible this could be a prehistoric burial area, and so we've called in bones expert Margaret Cox.
Well, I'm hoping we might have some sort of mortuary enclosure and maybe some sort of exposure platform or something like that.
How would you know if we have?
Well, we'd find post holes probably, and possibly disarticulated small bones from human beings.
If this is a Neolithic mortuary enclosure, then it was built at least 2,500 years before the Romans arrived, although Phil will need better dating evidence to prove it. But what is a mortuary enclosure? Basildon resident David Gore is intrigued by Victor's drawing.
I think if you have a ditch and a palisade around a mortuary enclosure, it's to keep animals out. It's not to stop people seeing what's happening.
Yes.
Because the people who put bodies in these enclosures and did all the things to them were very much involved with that transition from being a living thing to a dead thing. So it wasn't gory or horrible or offensive to them.
It's just a routine.
Just a routine thing.
Just the way what's going on there, that looks pretty gory and horrible.
What, here?
Yes.
Well, it looks as though they're moving a body.
It's at least
the treatment of the dead at this period suggests that the dead were actually deposited in a way to express lineage and ancestorship and possibly the right to the land and that type of thing. But what you don't get from the Neolithic are whole skeletons. You get bits of people, very often skulls and long bones. So something's being done to people, an initial process for them to become defleshed. Then certain bones are then being selected and interred in things like passage tombs.
On the other side of the track, we've now opened up another trench to help us make sense of the Roman walls we've uncovered.
What sort of date is that?
Well, that flange is very characteristic of a type that comes in the 3rd century through the 4th century. So
right.
We can't date them very tightly, but it's certainly later Roman Britain rather than the earlier period. Is there anything else besides this?
We've had quite a lot of things actually. We've got a sort of spread of mortar and flint with a lot of mortared tiles in as well. Most interesting, we've had bits of opus signinum. That's right, isn't
that's
it?
right. That's a kind of Roman flooring, concretey stuff. And if you look down here, you can see it's this pinky, concretey substance made out of fragments of broken tile and little bits of stone there. A real Roman workaday flooring, so perhaps a kitchen floor or something like that.
A much lower status Roman floor than the posh mosaic we know was housed in the villa itself.
You know, looking at you beavering away like this, I'm minded of the way Roach Smith described the mosaic when he first saw it. He says, the good taste and judgment displayed in the design astonish us. The more we examine the details and the ingenuity and contrivance of the artist in blending so many intricate geometrical forms in one beautiful and harmonious whole.
Very nice.
They don't write archaeological reports like that nowadays.
It's just as well.
Sadly, our archaeological report on the Neolithic mortuary enclosure will describe how we found very little in our extended trench. The evidence, it seems, has been ploughed away. Phil, however, did get some reward as we reached the bottom of the ditch.
Ah, thank God for that. Mick, I've got some very, very good news for you. I can actually confirm the date of our mortuary ditch.
Oh, great. I thought you were going to say that tea was on the way. What date is it then?
Well, I've just found a beautiful little blade core, and the best fit for a blade type core would have to be early Neolithic.
That's somewhere around 4000 BC, and there's other evidence of activity here in the prehistoric period. These circles look like Bronze Age barrows, burial mounds which would date to nearer 2000 BC. And our discovery of a mortuary enclosure ties in with other Neolithic evidence found on the other side of the river and begins to suggest that this location on the bend in the river, on the route through the Goring Gap, was a focus of activity and a place of special significance in prehistory. In terms of Roman archaeology, our most productive trench must be Trench 1 across this huge Roman ditch, which has given us a range of pottery from 4th century at the top to 1st century at the bottom.
So that's the whole of the Roman period, 400 years, as the ditch is filling up.
Yeah.
That's cracking, isn't it?
Yeah. But the question here really is, what is this ditch, isn't it? I mean, the size of it.
Well, it's so deep.
It's going that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've just cut a slice through it, haven't we, there?
Yeah.
That's why we can see it in section.
Yeah. But it's far too big just to be an ordinary field boundary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be bounding an area of settlement or activity. And the scale of the thing is really more akin with sort of the late Iron Age tradition.
Oh, right. Well, if it's got 1st century stuff in the bottom, then it's dug not long after that tradition.
Exactly, so perhaps we are looking at a local group of people, a local family, who are defining their first sort of post-Roman conquest settlement in the old traditional style.
Yeah.
And then the thing is gradually filled up and presumably the building develops out that way under the railway line and perhaps beyond.
And we now have an impressive collection of Roman finds from Trench 1 to show to landowner Andrew Howard. Significantly, most of the pottery sherds are big pieces with sharp edges, suggesting that they haven't moved far from where they were used.
Mark, are you pleased with what we've got?
Oh yes, I mean we've got a fabulous array of pottery, building materials, some animal bone, oyster shells, you know, the fish and chips snack of the Roman world.
What does all this tell us about the people who lived in that field?
Well, it tells us a great deal. I mean, first of all, it tells us the rough date range between which they were actually living out there. We've got pottery that dates from the 1st century AD, as you can see in this, what's called a cordon jar. We've got 2nd century AD pottery that's been imported from France, and this is your fine tableware, so that shows us that the people were able to afford pottery that was imported from other parts of the empire. And we've got late Roman pottery from the 4th century AD with the squiggles, because the man was illiterate and couldn't sign his own name.
This is a beautiful piece, isn't it?
That is very nice. That is a lovely beaker. We've got quite a lot of this one. Fit that together. There's the rim, and it gives us the complete profile.
Elegant piece, isn't it?
And I mean, this is the kind of thing you probably would have drunk out of. But in fact, we've got here the top of a wine jar from southern France, so we could quite happily imagine the people sitting there on a summer's evening looking out over the river, sipping a nice glass of red.
Have you seen any of this kind of stuff lying around?
Absolutely not. I'm stunned to see this stuff come out of the ground. It's really exciting.
What's that extraordinary thing there? That looks like First World War.
Believe it or not, it is actually Roman, and it's a barrel padlock.
Are you winding me up?
No, I wouldn't do that, Tony. It is a barrel padlock. You would have had another piece of metal that went over there and was secured in here by springs and then opened by a crude key. So we know there was at least one door on the site.
So how wealthy do you reckon these people would have been?
I think looking at the range of finds, we're probably looking at a sort of a middle-class type family who were living on the banks of the Thames and farming the area around here.
It's possible the villa itself might not have been that large, and Stuart's keen to talk to Tim Allen about the Roman building excavated on the other side of the river.
Well, there's one principal building, as far as we can see over there. There's a big field system, but there seems to be one major Roman building. I mean, it's about 30 metres wide, 20 metres long, quite a big building, old farmhouse. But apart from that, there doesn't seem to be a lot else.
So it's not one of these huge, great courtyard villas spreading out all over the place?
No, I think the majority of Roman farms are actually more like that one than these big courtyard villas.
Stuart thinks this location was like another excavated site, Barton Court, which was a farm that began in the Iron Age and evolved through the Roman period, with one main building at the heart of the complex.
Would it fit slap bang in the middle of a railway line?
You could lose a single domestic building, under the railway, and unfortunately you wouldn't get the rest.
Lose a lot. No. If you put your finger over that, all you'd see are these ditches and track lines and hedges and so on, and that's what we're seeing in the crop marks here. And there's the railway line,
straight through the middle.
But what about the Roman walls we did discover? How much more have we been able to find out?
But we think we've got 3 different Roman buildings, all sort of on top of each other. There's a wall of one of them here, which is reusing the roof of a previous building. And then another feature coming through here, which might actually be Saxon feature.
Barney, what can we tell from the finds about the people who were here?
Well, we've got, as Corenza's pointed out, this animal bone here. You can see there's these cow jaws, 2 of them. And basically, it's very low status, no real pottery, just bits of tile and loads of bone. So presumably, it's the sort of the nether end of the villa or that sort of area of the settlement.
So that would have just been a ditch that people chucked their old debris in?
And also the pottery we're getting is sort of cooking pots, mixing bowls, that sort of thing. There's no smart tableware or anything like that.
Does this wall go off into that trench?
That's it, well, you remember seeing that. This is the continuation of this wall. And then here we've got another building.
Where's that?
And it's cut by this much rougher flint cobble wall that comes across like this.
This wall is big, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a whopper, yeah. I mean, you can see it in the section, the construction cut and the foundations here come right the way out under here, all the way out this side. So it's massive, and it would have carried an enormous amount of weight. Building.
So could this be our villa?
Well, I think it's part of the villa complex. I mean, it's not the bit where the mosaic was, it's not the fancy bit, but that's what the finds are telling us. We're pretty sure it's Roman. It could have been a big timber building on top of this flint layer. It's part of the villa, it's probably the outbuildings again, and again it's probably the kitchen areas, the areas where animals are kept, where animals are slaughtered or whatever. It's part of the villa, but it's not the smart bit where the mosaic was.
Time to report to the villagers of Basildon. Sadly, we have to tell them that there are no surviving remains of the villa that housed the mosaics, but plenty of evidence of the Romano-British farm that surrounded it. We now know that these crop marks are the remains of ditches that divided up the landscape into fields and smaller paddocks. Field boundaries that changed many times over the 400 years that this area was part of the Roman Empire. This trackway was the main route into the site and continued down to the ford across the River Thames. As for the exact location of the villa, well, we're now certain that it's situated within the 40 metres that contains the railway. Of course, there would have been different phases of building over 400 years, but we reckon that even the later 4th century villa with its posh mosaics was relatively modest in size, possibly looking something like this. Most of the building stone would have been robbed away once the building fell into disuse at the end of the Roman period. But it was Brunel's navvies who built the original 2-track railway in 1838 and the later widening work in the early 1900s that destroyed the villa completely. But now, thanks to a team effort totalling 300 hours, we have a segment of replica mosaic which can be used to show how spectacular this floor must have looked when it was complete.
This really is beautiful.
It's fantastic.
Have we learned anything from doing it?
Oh, I think so, definitely. I mean, all of us who've worked on it, experts and students, have discovered that it's not as easy as you think and that every stage is important, getting the right techniques and not letting it get out of control. And I think, hopefully, we've ended up with something as good, if not better, than the original.
How about you? Have you learnt anything?
Yes, it's very hard on your fingernails.
David, is it very like the kind of Roman mosaics that you excavate?
Well, it may not be as good as some 2nd century mosaics, but it's certainly damn sight better than some 4th century ones.
It was a slightly backhanded compliment. Andrew, thank you for looking after us in the park for the last 3 days. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present this pavement, if you'd like it, to your park.
We'd very much like it, and thanks very much indeed.
Cheers.
Cheers.